Shaytanat, the Uzbek Godfather, Episode 2, The Cost of Silence. They say silence is gold, but in Tashkent, silence is blood. Because once you own the city's secrets, the city owns you. Zarif had built his empire on whispers. Now those whispers were starting to echo back. The year was 2011. Tashkent was changing. New money, new faces, new rules. But old debts, they never die. Zarif was no longer a name people whispered. He was Mr. Zarif now, the man behind the men in suits, the one who could make things disappear with a single phone call. Businessmen wanted to shake his hand, politicians wanted to borrow it, and the police pretended not to see it. But power, real power, it doesn't come free. Every favor has a cost. Every silence has a price. One night Zarif sat in his new office, high above the city. The skyline shimmered below, like gold dust spread over darkness. His phone buzzed. One message. They found Carolyn's man. He stared at it for a long moment, then lit a cigarette. His face calm, his eyes colder than ever. He knew what it meant. The Russians were probing his network again, trying to find the cracks. But Zarif didn't have cracks. He had mirrors, and everyone who looked into them saw what he wanted them to see. Narrator: Zarif was smart enough to know one truth. Silence only lasts if you feed it. So he fed it, with money, respect, and fear. He paid off inspectors, sponsored politicians, even built a charity for orphans. On paper, he looked clean, but behind every smile was a body. Metaphorical, of course. He once told his accountant, "The cleanest money is the one that's been washed twice." Still, not everyone believed in silence. Some people wanted to talk. There was a journalist, Timur Yuldashev, 32 years old, ambitious, too curious for his own good. He had started writing about corruption in the construction business, and it didn't take him long to find Zarif's name hidden between fake companies and offshore deals. Timur didn't know it yet, but he had just signed his own silence. One evening, he received a call, a soft voice, a polite invitation. "Mr. Zarif would like to meet you." He went, because in Tashkent, when power calls, you don't say no. They met in a quiet restaurant. Zarif sat by the window, sipping tea, his reflection floating in the glass. Timur looked nervous. "Zarif, you write fast, I like that, but speed can make mistakes." Timur said, "I only write the truth." Zarif smiled. "Truth is a flexible thing. It depends on who's paying for it." Timur swallowed. "Are you threatening me?" Zarif said, "No." Pause. "I'm offering you a job." Timur frowned. Zarif leaned forward, quietly. "You can keep chasing stories, or you can help write history." The journalist didn't answer. He didn't have to. 2 days later, his article disappeared from every site that published it, and so did he. Narrator: That was the cost of silence, not death, but disappearance. People didn't die in Zarif's world. They just stopped existing. But something was different this time. The city could feel it. Rumors started swirling about missing men, burned cars, foreign names whispered in bars. And then came her, Layla, the only person who ever made Zarif hesitate. She had returned from Moscow, working for a news agency, independent, fearless, too smart for her own safety. She came to him one evening, no appointment, just walked into his office like she still owned a part of his past. Layla said, "You changed, Zarif." Zarif said, "People change when they survive." Layla said, "And what did it cost you?" He looked at her for a long time, then simply said, "Everything that used to make me human." Narrator. That night the rain hit the glass like applause from ghosts. Zarif sat alone in his office, listening to the city breathe beneath him. He had everything he ever wanted: money, respect, and fear. But the silence was starting to sound like guilt. The next morning, the Russians made their move. One of his warehouses was raided. Drugs, money, fake papers, all planted, all meant to send a message. But Zarif was 3 steps ahead. Before the news broke, he called the same officer leading the operation. Zarif said, "You want to play war, Captain? Fine, but make sure your paycheck still clears tomorrow." By evening, the case was gone. By night, the captain's son got a full scholarship paid by Zarif's charity foundation. That's how the game worked. Not through guns, through gratitude. But gratitude fades. Fear doesn't. Somewhere in the city, someone was talking. And Zarif knew it wasn't about what he'd done. It was about what he was becoming. Because the deeper he sank into power, the more he started resembling the men he once destroyed. One night, Layla called him again. Layla said, "I know what you did to Timur." Zarif said, "Then you know why I did it." Layla said, "You used to be better than this." Zarif said, "No, I used to be poorer." She hung up. He sat there for a long time, the phone still glowing in the dark. Then he whispered, "Better men don't survive here." Days later, one of his men, loyal for years, disappeared. No trace, no message. And that's when Zarif understood silence was no longer his weapon. It was his weakness. Someone was turning it against him. Narrator. Every empire starts with a whisper, and every whisper ends with a scream. Zarif had mastered the art of silence. Now he was about to pay its price. Because in this city, loyalty is currency, and betrayal is tax. This is Shaytanat, the Uzbek Godfather, Episode 2, The Cost of Silence. Subscribe and follow. The streets are only getting louder.